In the remote Vallée de Joux, where winter temperatures plunge below freezing and snow blankets the landscape for months, an unlikely empire of precision was born. This isolated valley in the Swiss Jura Mountains, far from the glamour of Geneva or the commerce of Basel, became home to one of watchmaking's most revered names. Here, in the tiny village of Le Brassus, two young men with extraordinary vision would forge a partnership that would endure for a century and a half. But their greatest triumph, a watch that would redefine luxury itself, would only arrive after nearly 100 years of patient mastery, born from an act of desperation that broke every rule the industry held sacred. The year was 1875, and Jules-Louis Audemars had already established himself as a gifted watchmaker, creating complex movements in his family's workshop. At just 23 years old, he possessed an intuitive understanding of the intricate mechanics that transformed metal and jewels into instruments of time. That year, at an exhibition, he encountered Edward-Auguste Piguet, a fellow craftsman equally devoted to the art of haute horlogerie. Piguet, a repasseur, a finisher who perfected the final adjustments of watch movements, brought complementary skills to Audemars' creative genius. Their partnership was formalized with a handshake, and the manufacture of Audemars Piguet was born in the heart of the Vallée de Joux, where the long winters had traditionally driven farmers to supplement their income with the delicate work of watchmaking. From the beginning, the two founders pursued a philosophy that would define their house: never compromise on complexity, never sacrifice quality for quantity. While other manufacturers chased volume, Audemars Piguet remained deliberately small, focusing on complications that pushed the boundaries of mechanical possibility. They created minute repeaters that chimed the hours with crystalline clarity, perpetual calendars that tracked the irregular dance of months and leap years, and movements so thin they seemed to defy the laws of physics. By the turn of the 20th century, their reputation had spread beyond Switzerland's borders, attracting collectors who understood that an Audemars Piguet timepiece represented the pinnacle of horological achievement. The manufacture remained family-controlled through generations, passing through the hands of descendants who maintained the founders' uncompromising standards. Through 2 world wars, economic depressions, and the shifting tastes of the 20th century, Audemars Piguet continued producing watches in small numbers, each one a testament to traditional Swiss craftsmanship. Their workshops in Le Brassus became a sanctuary where master watchmakers spent years perfecting their skills, learning to finish components by hand with techniques unchanged since the 19th century. The company's independence allowed them to resist the pressure to modernize at the expense of artistry, to maintain methods that larger corporations would have abandoned as inefficient. But by the early 1970s, this devotion to tradition faced an existential threat. The quartz crisis had arrived, and it was destroying the Swiss watch industry with ruthless efficiency. Japanese manufacturers had perfected electronic movements that kept better time than any mechanical watch, cost a fraction of the price to produce, and required none of the years of training necessary to master traditional watchmaking. Venerable Swiss houses were collapsing, their craftsmen facing unemployment, their workshops closing. Audemars Piguet, despite its prestigious reputation, was not immune. Sales were declining, and the future of mechanical watchmaking itself seemed uncertain. The company needed something radical, something that would prove mechanical watches could still captivate the modern world. In 1971, Georges Gaulet, then managing director of Audemars Piguet, made a decision that must have seemed almost reckless. He approached Gerald Genta, an Italian-born watch designer known for his unconventional ideas, with an urgent commission. The Basel Fair was approaching, the industry's most important event, and Audemars Piguet needed a watch that would make an unforgettable statement. Genta had one night to create it. The legend, which Genta himself recounted many times, tells of inspiration striking at a restaurant. He sketched his vision on a napkin, a watch inspired by a deep-sea diver's helmet with an octagonal bezel, exposed screws, and an integrated bracelet that flowed seamlessly from the case. But the truly revolutionary element wasn't the design, it was the material. This watch, this statement of luxury and prestige, would be made of stainless steel. To understand how audacious this was, one must appreciate the rigid hierarchy of luxury watchmaking in 1972. Precious watches were made of precious metals: gold, platinum, sometimes silver. Steel was for tool watches, for utilitarian timepieces worn by professionals who needed durability, not status. The idea that steel could command a premium price, that it could be polished and finished to become an object of desire rather than mere function, contradicted everything the industry believed. Yet Genta's design possessed an undeniable power. The octagonal bezel, secured by 8 hexagonal screws visible on the front, created a geometric boldness unlike anything in watchmaking. The integrated bracelet, with links that decreased in size as they moved away from the case, gave the watch a sculptural unity. And the dial, with its distinctive tapisserie pattern, a textured grid that caught light like a woven fabric, added depth and visual intrigue. When the Royal Oak reference 5402ST debuted at the Basel Fair in 1972, it was priced at 3,750 Swiss francs. This was more than a gold Patek Philippe of the same era, several times the cost of a Rolex Submariner, and utterly unprecedented for a steel watch. The industry's reaction was predictable: shock, skepticism, and in many quarters, derision. Who would pay gold prices for steel? The answer initially was almost no one. The first Royal Oak sat in boutiques, admired but unpurchased. Too radical for conservative collectors, too expensive for those who might have appreciated its innovation. For 2 years, the Royal Oak seemed destined to become a beautiful failure, a bold experiment that proved the old rules existed for good reason. But gradually, something shifted. A new generation of collectors, younger and less bound by tradition, began to see what Genta and Golay had envisioned. They recognized that the Royal Oak wasn't trying to be a gold watch in steel. It was creating an entirely new category. The luxury sports watch, elegant enough for formal occasions, yet robust enough for active wear, became a symbol of a different kind of success. It spoke to those who had achieved wealth but rejected ostentation, who valued design and craftsmanship over the intrinsic value of materials. The Royal Oak's steel wasn't a compromise. It was a statement that true luxury resided in vision, execution, and rarity, not in the weight of precious metal. By the late 1970s, demand had transformed from trickle to flood. Audemars Piguet expanded the Royal Oak collection, introducing variations in gold and platinum for those who still desired traditional materials, but the steel version remained the icon. The watch that had saved the company from the quartz crisis became its signature, the piece that defined Audemars Piguet in the modern era. Each Royal Oak case required hours of hand finishing, with polished and brushed surfaces meeting at precise angles, creating a play of light that revealed the craftsman's skill. The integrated bracelet demanded meticulous adjustment to ensure comfort and fluidity. Even in an age of mechanization, the Royal Oak remained stubbornly artisanal. Inside the case, Audemars Piguet housed movements that honored their founder's legacy of complication and refinement. The original Royal Oak featured the ultra-thin automatic caliber 2121, a movement just 3.05 millimeters thick that allowed the watch to maintain an elegant profile despite its bold design. This caliber, based on a Jaeger-LeCoultre movement but extensively modified and finished to Audemars Piguet's exacting standards, featured a central rotor in 21-karat gold and decoration visible through the sapphire caseback. Later iterations would incorporate chronographs, perpetual calendars, and tourbillons, transforming Genta's original design into a platform for horological virtuosity. The manufacture in Le Brassus evolved to meet the Royal Oak's demands while preserving traditional methods. Watchmakers still finished components by hand, using techniques like anglage to create polished bevels on movement parts, and perlage to apply the circular graining that decorates bridges and plates. The Royal Oak's case required specialized skills. Finishing the octagonal bezel and integrated bracelet to Audemars Piguet's standards took years to master. Young craftsmen entering the workshops learned that speed mattered far less than perfection, that a single component might be rejected and remade if it failed to meet the manufacturer's standards. This insistence on hand finishing, even as competitors increasingly turned to automation, kept production deliberately limited and maintained the Royal Oak's exclusivity. Over the decades, the Royal Oak spawned variations that explored different facets of Genta's original vision. The Royal Oak Offshore, introduced in 1993, took the design language to more aggressive proportions, creating controversy among purists, but attracting a new audience. The Royal Oak concept pushed into avant-garde territory with skeletonized movements and experimental materials. Yet the original Jumbo, the reference that maintained the 39mm proportions and clean dial of the 1972 debut, remained the purest expression of Genta's genius, the watch that collectors considered the essential Royal Oak. In 2022, Audemars Piguet celebrated the Royal Oak's 50th anniversary with a series of releases that demonstrated how the design had become a canvas for innovation. The brand introduced the Artistry 3, featuring an open-worked movement that revealed the mechanical ballet within, while maintaining the Royal Oak's slim profile. This achievement required reimagining the movement's architecture, creating a skeletonized caliber that preserved structural integrity while offering visual drama. The anniversary celebrations also brought limited editions in novel materials and color combinations, each one selling out almost instantly, proof that the Royal Oak's appeal had only intensified over half a century. Today, under the leadership of CEO Ilaria Resta, Audemars Piguet remains one of the few major watch manufacturers still controlled by the founding families. This independence, increasingly rare in an industry dominated by luxury conglomerates, allows the company to make decisions based on heritage and craft rather than quarterly earnings. The manufacture in Le Brassus has expanded, with contemporary buildings designed by renowned architects standing alongside historic workshops, but the philosophy remains unchanged. Audemars Piguet still produces watches in limited quantities, still insists on hand finishing, still pursues complications that push technical boundaries. The Royal Oak's influence extends far beyond Audemars Piguet's own collections. It created the luxury sports watch category that now dominates high-end watchmaking, inspiring countless competitors and imitators. Yet none have quite captured the original's alchemy of proportion, detail, and presence. The 8 screws on the octagonal bezel, the tapisserie dial, the way the bracelet integrates seamlessly with the case, these elements have become as recognizable as any logo, instantly identifying a watch as a Royal Oak, even from across a room. What Gerald Genta sketched in a single night, what Georges Gollet gambled the company's future on, what craftsmen in Le Brassus have refined and perfected over 50 years has become more than a watch. The Royal Oak represents a philosophy that luxury is defined not by material value, but by vision, craft, and the courage to break conventions. It proved that steel, properly conceived and executed, could be more desirable than gold. It demonstrated that tradition and innovation need not conflict, that the hand skills of 19th century watchmaking could create objects that feel utterly contemporary. In the Vallée de Joux, where Jules-Louis Audemars and Edward-Auguste Piguet first joined their talents in 1875, the workshops of Audemars Piguet continue their patient work. Watchmakers still spend years mastering the finishing techniques that make a Royal Oak case shimmer with precisely controlled light. Movement decorators still apply hand-executed anglage to components that will only be seen by those who turn the watch over to admire the case back. And collectors worldwide still wait months or years for the privilege of owning a Royal Oak, that revolutionary watch in steel that changed luxury forever. The story of Audemars Piguet and the Royal Oak is ultimately a story about belief. Belief that excellence transcends material, that craft matters in an industrial age, that bold vision can transform crisis into triumph. From a handshake in a remote Swiss valley to a design sketched overnight, from industry skepticism to global icon, the Royal Oak's journey reflects the enduring power of those who dare to see luxury differently. And in an era of mass production and corporate consolidation, it stands as a reminder that the most precious things are often those made slowly, carefully, by human hands guided by uncompromising standards and timeless vision. What aspect of the Audemars Piguet story fascinated you the most? Was it the incredible craftsmanship, the visionary founders, or its unwavering commitment to independence and innovation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this deep dive into horological excellence and heritage, hit that like button, subscribe for more captivating stories, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. And tell us, what legendary watchmaker should we explore next?